Hello everybody. I know it's been a long time since I put a video up. I have been very busy with my family and taking care of my health. So today is August 23rd, 2026, and on August 23rd, 2019 was my preliminary diagnosis of ALS. So it's been 7 years and I'm still alive. I'm still able to talk and to participate in life. I can walk a little bit. My mobility is much more affected than it has been, but it's just kind of awe-inspiring and a level of survivor's guilt in some ways. I'm still alive, but so many people I have known that share my diagnosis, and people I've talked to, people I've cared about, people I've loved as in family members that had ALS have passed before me. I think about it when I first got diagnosed. I heard the words, and the first motor neurologist I saw, and I remember him being very upset that I didn't bring my husband, but I knew that I had a family history. I knew that my primary doctor had documented motor deficits. I didn't expect to get the diagnosis that day. So being in that office, hearing that, and just being put in the space of mentally understanding it and just kind of, wow. Later got confirmed several months afterwards that it was ALS and that I was a genetic carrier of a gene that causes ALS. Thinking about 7 years ago from when I was first diagnosed, and after I got my head a little together, started this channel to document the progress that I have with ALS. I really thought that I had 18 months. I didn't think I would live long with ALS, knowing my other family members. My dad had FTD with symptoms of MND. My one uncle died from ALS. After talking to my aunt, he had also symptoms of FTD. Another uncle died, and I don't know with the way he chose to die, whether he was showing symptoms. I have another uncle that was diagnosed after me that passed away within 18 months. So everybody, my dad, my uncle, two uncles died within 18 months. Since then, since my diagnosis, I have another aunt that has possible related diagnosis, not ALS, but the other. So I didn't expect to be here. I didn't expect to still be breathing, living, or talking. It's a gift, it really is. You never expect it. Life, you can never expect what's going to happen in life. We are not the ones that make the decision. Whether it be God, in whatever form you have, whether it be karma, whether it be, your actions. I have lived an interesting life, and I can't imagine, I never expected to still be alive. Able to talk, drink, and be present. So, I don't know. If you're diagnosed, not everyone's going to be one of the long-living people with ALS. I remember, I think about it was 2 years ago, social worker at my ALS clinic said, we think you're going to be one of the ones that live a long time. It's kind of like something you don't want to touch. You don't want to, step on, superstition. You don't want to say anything, but yeah. So apparently I am. Another gentleman that's part of my clinic is now having some of the speech issues as the progression goes on, but he's had ALS for 13 years. Amazing man, sweet, kind man. He's a pastor. So, I don't know. From my first video, the way that in the United States, Social Security disability, you know, with ALS and other organizations have worked to, once you get the confirmed diagnosis, there's not a waiting period for Social Security or Medicare to start. So that's changed. You know, the Healy platform's still out there, so there's still clinical trials going on. ALS is a wonderful organization, as in the ALS Association and Compassionate Care ALS, as well as the Gleason, Team Gleason. You know, it is a huge mind meld. I mean, anytime you get the terminal diagnosis, you know, your whole potential, you know, expectations change. You know, for your family, yourself, and everyone extended. It affects your life in every aspect. Like ALS affects my life in every aspect. And it's hard because in so many ways I want to push it and not have it overwhelm me. But you can't ignore it. You know, you can't disassociate from your disease. You know, denial is, you know, not just a river in Egypt, denial, but, you know, you can't deny it. It changes everything. You know, I know that I have lost several family members through the pandemic. You know, my sister from cancer, and uncle and stepfather. My stepfather passed away, my mom's husband. My mom passed away from COVID. So many people, and the person that I would have thought gone was me. I don't know whether prayer, my actions, you know, good karma, I don't know. You know, my story has not ended yet. And, you know, you never know. I won't be present for the actual ending in the normal way. So what's been going on? I have plateaued in some ways, but I have been on a very good medication regimen since I'm still predominantly a promoter neuron. ALS, you know, I'm a genetic ALS patient, so we're just a little bit weird. And it's very weird that my form of ALS, being C9orf72, which is the predominant genetic cause of ALS, 10 to 12% of ALS patients are genetic. Of known genes, there may be unknown genes and that haven't been recognized yet. But 60% of those are the C9orf72. And most of us that are C9 die rather rapidly, like my family members that have. It was a joke after my stepfather passed in June. While he was going, I was up in Dallas. You know, my daughter, oldest daughter, had some things. When you have two children, I have a little granddaughter. I'm sure I talked about my second granddaughter. You know, you can't babysit when you have, you know, that kind of thing with doctor's visits, little things are happening. I helped my 5-year-old kindergarten granddaughter learn how to serve and in volleyball, since my second daughter's a big volleyball person. So seeing her on her volleyball journey has been wonderful. You know, being Oma and being there and being present in my grandchildren's life has not been something I would have ever expected when I first got diagnosed 7 years ago. It's a grace. It is truly a grace. But we were talking about when my stepfather, he got randomly developed a very severe type of oral cancer. And we were talking about my mother. My mother had 5% of her lung capacity for the last 25 years of her life. She had severe asthma that led it into chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, also known as COPD or emphysema. She had asthma related. So, oh, that woman, what she survived with osteoporosis and that kind of cough, and how, you know, the x-rays of her spine were awful. But, you know, she lasted. My maternal grandmother had congestive heart failure. You know, I think she lived 30 years with a very sick heart with CHF, but she kept living. So I'm still living with ALS. So I have C9orf72, and I also have, I guess, an aspect of the cockroach gene. I keep coming back. You know, that's something that I was in bed, and, you know, you have to go to the bathroom, and, you know, I get very spastic. So I have to go through a series of exercises or occupational, you know, PT things to loosen my joints. I can't just rush up and go to the bathroom, otherwise I will fall over. And I'm still stubborn about getting a bedside commode, and I have a little female urine holder, which, you know, I'm not the most graceful person. So do that stretch to go, but it's kind of like your body moves. And I just realized with my stiff body, and it's kind of like, you know, your mind and your brain thinks, keep doing. And it's amazing that sometimes, you know, even despite the spasticity and the weakness and that, I keep going. It's kind of like I don't know how not to. So within the first part of diagnosis, and having a past history, you know, I'm Gen X. We all had, you know, some kind of trauma growing up, right? I'm a retired nurse. I worked cardiac units, pediatric units, ER, and hospice. I've seen some things, right? And honestly, out of the thousands of people, I think I only took care of 2 patients with ALS diagnosed that I know, and only 1 that had the form I have. And we're talking about probably 25 years of nursing, probably saw thousands and thousands of patients. It's rare than most things. There's probably more people diagnosed that aren't known on their death certificate. So it's rare, or how much of it is underdiagnosed too. But knowing that, you know, I have some part of a part of a family that keeps going. My aunt, who's my godmother, got diagnosed. She's a type 1 diabetic that's very brittle, which means her blood sugars go up and down, up and down. She also got diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Then she got diagnosed with severe regurgitation and cardiac valve regurgitation, and she ended up having to have corrective heart surgery after chemo. And she's still alive. I mean, just being diagnosed at stage 3, it's just, even my sister, my middle sister that passed away, had inflammatory breast cancer, so it's called IBC, and she was diagnosed at stage 3, which people with that, I mean, you know, most people that are diagnosed with inflammatory breast cancer die within a year. She lasted 5 years. So, I mean, that's a long time, you know. She had small children, you know, my twins that were like 18 months, and she got to see them into 1st grade. Sad. I mean, sorry about all the sadness. But anyways, I was talking to my stepbrother, you know, as my stepfather was in his process of dying. And we talked about the cockroach gene, because he's like, yeah, you're like your mom, you're still there. It made me laugh. Ended up, you know, post him passing and sadness of that, and my step siblings, you know, that's really difficult. He was a really good man, my children knew him as a grandfather, so it was hard for them. And, you know, for me, it's sad, you know, definitely sad. You know, it's just, I think in some ways you lose so many people. In some ways you numb. I mean, maybe that's the way I'm processing now. You know, it's like if I sat down with grief and it's a part of who I am, that hole, you know, it's like someone dies and it leaves the hole in your life with the love that can't go anywhere. And it just, you know, gets bigger and bigger. Life grows around it and grows around it. You know, it's just, you know, I'm going to have a lot of people meet me on the other side. But my ended up getting a lot of pictures of my mother and myself and my siblings little. So it's my youngest sister. There weren't a lot of pictures, but apparently my mom had them in a drawer. My stepfather organized them. And it's just seeing pictures of my mom, even my parents, you know, they divorced when I was 12, seeing them together. It's just, you know, seeing my mom before she got sick, you know, mentally and physically, you know, just it's almost put me in, it just struck me. I have PTSD from events in my life. And there's something that, you know, they call it, the technical word is dissociation, but I kind of feel spacey after some things happen, and that kind of spaced me out a little bit. It's just, you know, the grief of the loss and just kind of seeing it, and, you know, you miss people. So it's been quite a lot. This has been a busy year. You know, I have been infrequent with putting up videos. You know, I feel kind of sad that, you know, it's the survivor's guilt in some ways. You know, I'm still talking and I can move my limbs. I'm not, you know, no way could I run or do big things, but having people that are suffering ALS that may have more of a fast progression, you know, can get angry at that. People can be angry that someone has the same disease and doesn't have the same process or doesn't follow the same process that the majority does. You know, and it hurts, you know, it's like, you know, you can understand that, you know, when you get diagnosed with ALS, you're angry that some weird disease is taking over your life and basically taking over your body to where you can't even possibly speak, can't move, can't do things for yourself. Eventually you can't breathe. I can understand where the anger's there, you know, but being a face of it and it's like, I don't want to feed the anger. You know, I don't want to feed that because I can be very angry. That was one of the energies I used to survive, you know, in my 20s. You know, it's like, you know, I will do it. And I did. You know, been a little bit of a firecracker in my life. But, you know, just decided to come back and, you know, commence and share, you know, 7 years. Can you believe it? I'm still kind of, wow, it's been 7 years. You know, I have my youngest daughter. Oh, goodness. She was in 2nd grade when I got diagnosed, you know, starting, you know, 23rd. So she was entering 2nd grade when I got diagnosed, preliminary, and, you know, into 2nd grade when it was confirmed. And now she just started high school. She's a freshman. You know, she's still been playing volleyball, has gotten really good. She's an artist, so she's going in her high school, she can do a code thing of fine arts. So she's doing 3D and sculpture and art. And they put her in, it chose her, I guess it's not something you can choose, but they put her in a class for leaders. You know, she is a very articulate and calm young lady. I mean, you know, she's turning 14, so actually this week. So, you know, that was the thing I can remember, 7 years ago, it was right before, or the day after I got the preliminary diagnosis. My oldest daughter was getting married, and my sister had just completed the first part of her chemo, and she was dealing with her own touches of, terminal diseases and touches of, that space between life and death. But I can remember getting, not wanting to tell my oldest, what I was dealing with while throwing her bridal shower. And that was a great way to deal with, May having seen my primary doctor and having to wait to see the neurologist, and, all the what ifs, being a member of a family that has familial ALS, knowing my symptoms, I knew what I had. I just had to get it confirmed. And being that way, it's very rare because most people end up having to take almost 2 years to get the diagnosis before they, die. Knowing that what I was dealing with and dealing with that, doing the art stuff, I could still do things I can't do now. That does lead to frustration for me. But, getting all the things, looking at all the cell things, trying to match things, doing the bridal shower things and things that she would do for the wedding, her style. She was really annoyed for all the questions I was asking. All the coupons for back when Joann's was still around, but Michael's, Hobby Lobby, all the different ones. And me and my best friend she had the most beautiful shower. Beautiful, beautiful. And then my daughter's 7th birthday was the day after that. And we had a big celebration for her 7th birthday. And each were my daughter's wedding bridal shower was the day after, and my youngest birthday was 2 days after. And that was a lot. It's like things you don't say, things you don't want to do that. I had to do that because, that's something, for my oldest, not to know, hey, your mom's dying. I've been the main parent in her life. Her father developed a drug and issue that kept him out for many years. There's certain people that are safe around your child, and certain people that aren't. So I became a single parent, and I don't regret it. I don't regret her, and I'm very proud of who she's become. And the fact that curse of addiction was broken with her. But to all that pressure that I was when I was first diagnosed, and the fear that I had about having ALS, and not wanting to break my daughter's heart right before she got married, and struggling to have a 7-year-old and explain that mommy may not be there, soon. I mean, oh my God. That is one of the hardest things, my husband. In the next year, in 2020, his friend died right before his birthday. He was a Labor Day baby. And he has been the biggest rock for me. I've had several good friends that have stood by. Some people closest to me, I don't know, it's like, you have your long-living ALS patient, and that the fact that I still have some abilities. I think some people that see you ill, and when you have something really big that's going to take you away, have a hard time fully accepting it and fully, it's like they create that, oh, you can still do that, not realizing what's right in front of them. And that's hard, You know, I have a thing where I take different family members with me to my palliative care doctors. I have palliative. I'm still going to the ALS clinic. I wouldn't probably qualify for hospice at this moment. I'm a little bit above that. And besides, I'd have to probably get recertified to be one of the people that graduated hospice, you know. Eventually I won't, but right now, you know, my youngest, I know that 7 years ago when I got diagnosed, you know, I had to fight because I had fought for her to get dyslexic care because she was looking at a book or like schoolwork and her eyes were moving. I'm like, what are you trying to, you know, it's like, it looks like she was fishing. Are the words moving? Yes, you know, had to go through, fight for her to get help, got her help. But knowing, you know, just being 7 and how do you reach 7-year-old and say, mommy may not be there. You know, I can remember calling, in the Houston area, there's a beautiful organization called Bo's Place that gives counseling to children and teens when their parents die. And I called and asked, how do I talk to my daughter? And I remember the lady saying, do not put the pressure on yourself right now. That's going to make things worse for you. So, you know, with different things, like with her aunt, my sister, you know, dying from cancer and the grief, her godfather, my husband's best friend, dying. He was definitely a part of her life. You know, her Nana, my mom, you know, it's like she's been in grief counseling, but I know that my diagnosis in some ways, as a parent, she started clinging to my husband more because I guess that felt safer. You know, mommy's gonna go away. You know, it's like I can remember her doing a painting when the state organization of the ALS Association used to have pediatric meetings, and I can remember her doing a painting that was, you know, mommy has ALS, and you know, the different things being in a wheelchair, and then getting better. And it's like, I hope to someday that will be a outcome, that people will, like diabetics, will have a treatment that they can have, or if they can ever find a preventive or, you know, possible cure. Now, it may be time. I think that having a decent treatment like diabetes will hopefully soon be a reality. And for people with, like, look at the people that have SADI. You know, there's actually, you know, treatment now. You know, people that may be the genetic carriers, if they have symptoms, they may not be able to actually have something to stop it. Now with C9orf72, that's not there yet. There's things in trial, there's different studies. You know, when you have something genetic, sometimes people will, especially researchers, you know, it's like the people with C9orf72 are very, you know, sketchy, that they're awful people. I mean, just ugly things, you know. It's like until I was diagnosed, I mean, I was a member of honor societies. I have not committed crimes. I have no criminal history. I was in the helping professions, you know. I definitely felt like nursing was my calling, you know. It's like I wanted to help people. I never worked for for-profit hospitals. I always worked non-for-profit. I donated time. I took care of people. Now, with healthcare, post-pandemic, United States, you know, has very fractured healthcare. Right now, you know, it's like you see what happened to United Healthcare's CEO, Luigi. You know, it's like there's a breakdown in healthcare, profits over people. There are our national health system between Dodge and having the leader RFK over. I mean, at least some of the studies did get approved post the cuts from Dodge. I am in a study for my genetic type, and it's more of an observational. It's not the one that's a drug one. I've already completed that, and I've expired the ability to be on any clinical trials once you're over 3 years, and the potential for neurological damage. They don't generally, in most of the studies, if you're not in already stage 2 or stage 3 of the clinical trials, you're not able to stay on the medicines. So I got a one and done with that, though I'm hoping it shows as a treatment for my form. So anyways, you know, it's just kind of like, can't do that. So now my relationship with both my daughters is good, but with my burgeoning teenager, gonna be 14 in a couple days, and she's sweet. I mean, she's still, you know, 14 teenage girls are just something. I mean, you just have to love them and know that this is the process, and it's the process of, like, when you have your little baby girl or your little baby boy, and you're like, oh, I just wanted to take care of them. And it's kind of like they grow, and they're, you know, the major psychological, physical changes you have during the teenage years. You know, you grow into being the person you are. Of course, it takes until you're like, what, 26, 27, until your brain, you know, frontal lobe's totally mature, but it's part of their maturation, part of them becoming them. But oh my God, it's annoying. And she's gentle with that. I mean, it's still kind of annoying, but she's gentle with that. It's kind of like, oh, I'm tired, Mom. Oh, I'm tired. It's like, you know, please don't me. You know, it's kind of like, I'm lucky that I have lived 7 years with ALS. You know, I've gone into menopause, had my eyes checked because I'm diabetic, and I don't have retinopathy. You know, one of those things when you get diagnosed and what happens in your body with ALS, any inflammation could cause the progression of ALS. Anything with, like, I was told not to hit my head, fall, you know, any injuries can cause more inflammation and progression. So, you know, with diabetes, I've tried to keep very close with that, not only being someone that has severe nearsightedness or myopia. I didn't want to have, you know, go blind with retinopathy. But so went to the eye doctor, and I lived long enough to have a small cataract. How awesome is that? Things you wouldn't be joyful about, but I'm like, yay, I lived to get cataract. Yay, I've aged to this point. Yay. Silly, you know, little things you wouldn't guess that, you know, it's kind of happy. I was able to do that. You know, this year I'm turning 52, so how awesome. You know, I'll say that, yeah, until after I turn 52. It's like a little knock on wood. You know, I just, you know, I'm lucky that I have had a good mental health counselor, because I do recommend when you get diagnosed with ALS or any life-altering to terminal disease, you know, taking care of your mental health will not only help you, but help your family members and your caregivers. You know, it's stages of grief with yourself dying, and the whole socioeconomic changes, everything that happens, you know, when you can't work and, you know, the bills still came through, your medications. I mean, ALS is an expensive disease. You know, everything that happens, you know, it's like it affects all of things. So I'm lucky that I found a good counselor that I have a good relationship with, that's helped me integrate everything that's been going on. My closest friend is going through a divorce. You know, been married for 31 years. You know, it's kind of, watch the algorithms. You know, somehow if you've gotten this video, you may have been subscribed to me. You may just watch things about ALS, someone that has a terminal disease, but you know, I think that she's one of the people that, you know, and I think it's happening a lot. You know, there's actually, Meta has a lawsuit going on in California right now about how social media affects people. You know, it can affect people's marriages, not just meeting, you know, a high school or college romance person, but generally what we're watching and what we're being fed can affect. And, you know, the algorithms can make people money. But, you know, I think there's a whole thing, you know, there's a whole glow up after divorce. You know, it's like, ugh. So he kind of went down the rabbit hole of our United States politics, and somehow their marriage is ending. But being there for her is a gift that I've lived so long. You know, we've been best friends since we were in 4th grade. You know, we're talking 40 plus years. I'm glad I'm here for her. You know, our dads died in the same year. They're both Marines in Vietnam. Our mothers are both passed away. You know, sibling changes, you know, it's like everything's affected, but I'm glad I'm there for her. And I'm going to be taking her to her lawyer for mediation, all that. You know, you can't, with divorce, it's the children that matter. You know, the process of both spouses going through the change and that, you know, you have to compassion for everybody. But, you know, losing someone that you've been with that long, it's like a death. I mean, it's, you know, it is rediscovering who you are and what your life is going to be. It's never fair for the woman either, you know. I'm sure on other spot, I don't know what the men are going through, but, you know, I think that in some ways, you know, ALS has given me a gift to put things in certain perspective that I may not have. You know, you don't go screaming like Chicken Little when the sky's falling. You know, it's, you know, you kind of develop more of a understanding of things, I think. In some ways that could be a gift, you know. There are gifts to things, you know. Yes, it's a horrible, brutal disease and it causes pain and disgust. It's horrible to lose everything. I still get frustrated with myself because I can't do what I did before. It's illogical. I know that I have a motor neuron disease. I'm going to lose abilities, but I still get upset that I can't do what I used to be able to do. I don't know if that's an ego thing. It probably is. But I don't know. I mean, I was lucky, you know, I didn't meet my husband until I was 36 years old. You know, between that, you know, I have, you know, my first love, first major relationship, you know, I had my daughter, you know, I had a college boyfriend who I loved so very much, and a later relationship that finally got me into counseling, and other relationships. You know, I've, you know, survived breakups. You know, it's kind of like you date someone, life changes, you get on. You know, my best friend is learning how to do that. You know, it's not something, when you've been married for 30 years, you don't expect that stuff happening. Life can change on a dime, you know. There is honestly nowhere safe. Safety is an illusion. You just keep going, right? You know, I have another friend that is going through chemo right now and treatments for a cancer that hopefully they can stall the progression on. And that's really big. You know, she's on one of the medications that was in my clinical trial that makes you feel terrible. You know, just hard. You know, I think right now in the world, things are a little bit hard. Inflation is affecting all of us. You know, I'm embarrassed that the way our country is going, you know, with treating other people, you know, people of Greenland, people in Canada, people of Europe, people all across the world. You know, I'm sorry, I didn't vote for the fool. And if you do vote for him, yeah, if you get upset with me, you know, where's your Doge checks? Where's your, you know, where's the medicine that's, you know, so cheap? Where is the lower gas prices? Where is the food prices going lower? You know, think about it. You know, I'm in a state where, you know, the people that produce alcohol, or the people that are building the AI centers, you know, that affect our electricity away from, you know, normal citizens or the water sources. They're pouring money into certain campaigns of certain people. I don't know. People matter more than things to me. So it's been a big summer of changes. My daughter's going into high school. She is in high school now. She's in the leader class. So cute. So, she's Gen Alpha. She's I guess the oldest of Gen Alpha. But, she's turning 14, so she's a freshman. August birthday, right? She's going in, put in a class, they select her for leaders. And she's like, Mom, there's actual adults in there. They've got facial hair. It's like, there might be juniors or seniors. And it's just like, yeah, baby, during high school, a lot changes. They're just a little bit older than you. But no, they're not full adults. That's cute. It's, just little things that happen. My youngest granddaughter's now in kindergarten, just seeing, from when she was born, during the pandemic to now that she's in kindergarten. And she's just, that child's going to be a leader too. Watch that child, be a CEO. She is quite, a little person, My second granddaughter is so much like her mother, just joy, just happy and joy. It's adorable. So my husband, it's like being on the other side. I'm glad that I can still do things because I still have the ability to drive, on days that are good. I have other days that if I lose my arms, sometimes I get to where I can't raise an arm. And, that's the spasticity is bad. So thankfully I can, but, he's diabetic, things with eyes, retinopathy, and he's undergoing eye treatment. We had the talk today that, going about Social Security when you can choose, 62 versus waiting till you're 65. And it's like, well, the thing is about insurance. You might be able to get Social Security, but do you have Medicare? You have to think about healthcare. It's like being a diabetic is not a cheap thing, I was looking, we had our AC, temperatures are like, in the 110s and above, 42C, just awful stuff, right? Just really hot. And I am a princess in the pea with heat. Very cold causes worse spasticity. Extreme heat causes issues. I am a cardiac patient. After I had my youngest, I went into postpartum cardiomyopathy, so I have diastolic dysfunction, part of your heart, and heat is bad. So our AC went out, on Friday. It's like awful. So doing the celebrations the weekend before my daughter's birthday, 14-year-olds, it's like they don't want to have the big family parties. They just want to do things with their friends. It's kind of like you have to make sure that the friends and you keep the lines of communication open so you can hear what's going on and hopefully be able to steer a little bit. But went to the mall, so they got to go do, I don't know what they call it. It's like the Asian, I don't know, it's kind of like a little balls and games where they get little squishies and stuff like that. So it's called Round One. So she had fun with that. And then they went over to Hot Topic to get clothes and do that. And Charlotte Rouge and all the different things. And then my daughter goes into the one shop that's in the mall that's very hippie-ish. And she's like, ooh, I like this tree. It's the same one my sister had. My sister Rebecca was more on the 1990s version of hippie, right? She liked the dress. It's like all this stuff. It's like, it's so funny you like things that your aunt likes. My granddaughter's a big Halloween, she's like, I like Mr. Bones. Who knew that stuff would be genetic, right? It's like, it's interesting to see how the different personalities come. It's interesting. So we did get the AC fixed the next day, but oh my God, the cramps. I had an issue with, I am on baclofen, 80 milligrams, which is orally, which is one of the largest doses you can take orally. And I do not want to have the baclofen pump. I've talked to different specialists, ALS specialists, and it may lead to faster progression. It's kind of like how I didn't want to take Redicova. I can't take Retisol because of my liver. It raises my liver enzymes. And Redicova, you know, it's like all the things, the side effects people are talking about. They might live a little bit longer, you know, 6 months longer or such. But the fact that you might lose your legs soon. Now, my legs aren't the greatest. You know, I can't walk that far. Like when I did that, you know, get up and it's like my whole leg locks up, hip and all. You know, you can fall very easy like that. So I'm on the back of, and I've been on Keppra, or the generic of Keppra. It's another Schizer drug. And it is used like, I don't know. It is not a first line treatment. It's a second or third line treatment. It actually works wonderfully for my form of ALS and spasticity, because you know, it's kind of like the spasticity is a good thing because it still keeps things moving. It's the reaction of the body when it's weaker. I don't, you know, all the different things, you know, but I have, it feels like bone, joint, muscle crushing type of spasticity. It's very severe. So I didn't realize that how my current medication regimen has been keeping me comfortable, not the suffering. I'm up to 750 milligrams of Keppra twice a day. But having the whole thing with getting the refills and getting different things with doctor's orders, I was without it for about a week, and oh my gosh, the pain and suffering of the disease came back. You know, I've meditated, you know, forms of prayer, you know, all of that, you know, got to the point where I can relax myself through severe things, you know, like, you know, laryngospasms, all those things, you know, it's like you have to find ways that you can help with pain and suffering. That's one of the ways I've helped. But that's awful. I mean, it was awful. Just the crunching and the awfulness of, you know, the pain from spasticity, you know, I've forgotten it in some ways. So thankfully with talking, you know, it's kind of like talking to pharmacy, talking to my case manager, and getting things all connected. Finally, I was able to start it again on Saturday, and this being Sunday evening, that spasticity is lessened, but thankfully we have AC now. I know how many people are suffering in Europe with the heat, extreme heat. And I think about it, you know, how many people with heart disease die? You know, it's like, I told my husband, if this isn't fixed, I'm gonna die. You know, it's like, in the morning, I was sleeping under a fan on the, you know, being in menopause, I have the, you know, cooling blankets, cooling pillowcase, all of that. And I am on HRT, you know, it's kind of like, oh, it might cause, I don't care what it causes. I have ALS, I just don't want to suffer right now. So I had that, but it's like, oh, with having heart disease, I can't, something happens where, you know, I can sweat. I have diaphoresis, you know, I can sweat very easy from head to toe and just put out buckets. But the cooling part of it, something happens that I can't cool. So that morning I was hot to touch, you know, I had, you know, body temperature of 100, you know, wilting flower. So I took a cold bath, showerish, and actually I ended up going to my best friend's to sit under her AC. Got to watch a scary movie. It's kind of funny. It's like the generational things of scary movies. You know, saw the movie Obsession. You know, we actually, can you believe, I've lived until the times where you can actually order to have delivered movie popcorn to your house. And it was funny for that, you know, my niece she's going to be a senior this year, so 17, and she's like, oh, it's a great movie. Actually, the storyline didn't have enough depth, and it was just a weird movie. Yeah, it wasn't that great, but, you know, it's kind of funny because, like, every generation has their different movies and how oh, it was great, it was great. The popcorn was good. So came home, and it takes a while for the house to stop, you know, to cool. I think it was 110 degrees that day. No, 111, yeah. I was 112 in Dallas. So really hot, you know. Thankfully it's cold, and now we have a nice, you know, in the 70s. So thankful. You know, I can drink as much, you know, keep hydrated. You know, it's important with having ALS to stay hydrated. And any weather and anything that is a little bit off is going to make you struggle a little bit more, you know. Wish that, you know, had the money to live in San Diego. Keep that 77 degrees right there. Wonderful weather, but yeah, no, can't afford that. I wish, you know, time to play the lottery. But I don't know, I think I've, you know, in the 7 years, you know, I decided I could not work as a nurse anymore. You know, I even at the point of diagnosis, you know, I had a cachectic, very skinny cancer patient, you know, but the power of, you know, people that are angry, you know, I don't know, the power of psychosis, little people with dementia, all that stuff, they will knock you out, they will punch you, they will hurt you. Well, this man was angry, and, you know, just little tiny cachectic, little tiny skinny, bony man, you know, was angry about something and pushed me and I fell. You know, trying to insert a Foley was difficult, you know, because the hand, you know, the coordination, fine motor coordination. So I retired my license. And actually, if you look at my nursing license, it says retired. I'm a nurse that got to retire. A rare thing of my generation. You know, people may leave the profession because, especially how difficult it is now, nurses are not valued. Anyone that of the helping professions, I mean, you know, insurance companies are dictating what doctors can write, what they charge. You know, health facilities, you know, the CEOs may make a lot of money, but nurses and physical therapy and occupational therapy are doing well. But, you know, respiratory therapy, social work, you know, there's so much affected. And it's sad, you know, but I'm glad I got to go and advocate and speak out my truths and do public speaking. I mean, I finally got to march on Washington, literally in Washington. It's kind of funny. 1 year I had gone to do that, and I'm a part of the ALS, the Blue Flags. So my name was on one side of the National Monument, and I was speaking out on the other side within 2 weeks. How awesome is that? You know, I wish I could do that. I mean, you know, there's so many organizations that are wonderful. There's so many things I would love to be present with. Just, you know, I had a family, you know, my paternal family had an event. My cousin, John, is a wonderful person. I mean, I can remember him as a 7-year-old. I said that he was going to take over the world. You know, he's that kind of kid. And yeah, he works for the World Bank. But so literally kind of, right? But he organized a trip to Germany, near where our family, owned like a shoe shop, you know, creator of shoes and making shoes and repairing shoes. My family immigrated, some of the family stayed there. So it was lovely, and the tickets were only, you know, about $300 at that point. You know, hotels wouldn't have been terrible, but buying a car that is power chair complement, you know, that's expensive. We're still looking for the right one. But just the whole thing with travel and, you know, inflation, it's like, you know, when you're on Social Security, when you're, you know, dealing with a major disease, and, you know, just think about how much more school clothes cost this year. You know, it's like the groceries, of course, then, you know, you get groceries that, you know, it's like, well, the lettuce, you know, salmonella, E. coli, all these horrible things, you know, it's like, oh, wow, dodge cuts. If you cut certain things, I mean, you know, how many of the food safety people were cut, you know, you have mega farms, which there should never be a mega farm, you know, donating money to different campaigns. I mean, we need to get rid of Citizens United here in the United States. 2 states now have done that. I remember I was so upset about it when it passed. You know, Bush had it done, it passed, you know, it woke up under Obama, but it was passed by the Bush administration, and how that has affected the United States. You know, it's, you know, everything comes around again. You know, we repeat so many pasts. You know, right now we're undergoing a major change in the United States. You know, there is so much ugliness, but, you know, where there's more of us than there are them, so I don't say that. Got to speak out to what's right, you know. But me going through to that, to go through with my phones, I mean, I'd have to get a burner phone going through. You know, it's kind of like I had a last year to renew my driver's license. You know, it's like, yes, I may lose my ability to drive, but I will never have my driver's license taken away from doing something bad, you know, like driving and hurting someone. My goal is not to hurt anybody. But just to do that, I was warned that, you know, they wanted my social security card. They didn't have a copy. You know, Real ID came effective, though I did already have Real ID. And the state already had my fingerprints multiple times because I was a nurse. Quantico has my fingerprints because I worked for the VA at a certain time. But, you know, it's like, to do that, and they wanted my birth certificate. So it's like, you know, you know, it's just the point, and I am concerned that, you know, they're already having these warehouses and containment things owned by private prisons. You know, very similar to places that were in Germany in the late 30s and 40s. Nobody deserves that. You know, a lot of people are, there are people that are working, just about to get their green card or had green cards, or under DACA, or under correct legal ways to be in, and they're being harassed. I mean, they've had indigenous people that were here before the country, the United States was created. You know, some Navajo tribe members were deported. You know, it's like me and my loud mouth. You know, I've marched on Washington. You know, I care about things that my state has I felt that was kind of a warning. We can take your license, and you might be deported if you can't show that you're a citizen. And I'm sure that page is, you know, fell behind my fridge, and I in no way can move my fridge. But that was kind of scary. So I have not, as much as I've written letters, but I haven't been out protesting ICE personally, because I can't do the social political things. I'm disabled. I can't actually be there without that. And then, can you imagine someone with ALS being in prison? Not good, not good. I don't know. I can't be the big tough thing that my mouth still goes. Though I think my words matter. I think putting out love versus fear, putting out kindness when there's cruelty, being kind when it's easier to be cruel, and speaking up for the other, it matters. You know, it does matter. You know, it's like they can threaten me all they want, you know. I can't fight. I'm not dangerous, you know. There's nothing they can do, but I'm still going to speak. I think I'm going to have my Halloween stuff set up, holding up different signs, you know, vote for Tellerico. I don't know. You know, it's kind of getting to that time when all of us Halloween nuts. And through the years, 7 years ago, I was thinking about the same thing, you know, since, you know, I was younger. You know, it's kind of like the holiday that you don't have to worry that anyone, if you're divorced, I grew up in a divorced family, if the other parent was going to be alone, you know, it's the decoration. So some of my art, I had an art scholarship, but I decided to be a nurse because I had a young child, and being an artist in the 90s, unless you're one of the chosen ones, you know, doesn't pay as well, and there's not as many benefits like for insurance. So I chose to be in nursing, and I felt like the calling, and I don't regret nursing. I don't miss it. Isn't that sad? I feel like I was completed. That's lucky. You know, I've done the meditation. I still lead meditation for a particular group for the family members and friends. I haven't posted all the meditations. I think that the way when I lead meditations, whether it be private or in groups, the one-to-one connection when you can read the group or read the person works better for me. You know, I think being a nurse, especially working nights, which I did for years, and yes, it is bad for your health, but I have a calming voice, so I think that helps. I don't know, 7 years, so I've changed things. I never, you know, I meditated deeply in my late 20s, you know, got into it in my teens, and then who knew that I'd go get certified to be a meditation teacher? You know, I like to say I'm a facilitator. You know, it's pretty cool. I mean, you know, even when you're dying, even when you get diagnosed with a terminal diagnosis, you can still do things. You know, you can still do it. Now I'm still adjusting to have the disease because it's like a surfboard. You know, it's like you're surfing. The waves change and you have to pivot every single time. I've only had one fall. Recently, I went to see my daughter's volleyball game, and it was the bleachers, and I didn't sit at the front of it because I had a fear there weren't the things where you couldn't be hit. You know, being hit in the head with a volleyball is painful. So I went up and my feet and I fell in the bleachers. Thankfully, they had the thing to catch me, because if I didn't, I mean, I could have been really hurt. But, you know, it's embarrassing to fall in public. You know, you don't want to fall and get hit. I didn't hit my head. I swear, since Dr. Appel told me, if you hit your head in a fall, you could progress faster. Anytime I fall, my head's up straight. It's like, my whole body could be torn up. At least I'm not going to hit my head again. My belief is that since I have the genetic form of ALS, and having COR72 is, you know, you already make too much maladapted RNA, and that all that gunk that built up, you know, glutamate, everything that is that if you have an injury, ineffective maladaptive repair is going to will not repair things right. So I had 2 concussions from car accidents. The last one I had post-concussion syndrome. Bad. I never knew whiplash was real. It's real. And that, within 8 months from that car accident, I was diagnosed with ALS. First started having symptoms. Well, actually, it'd probably be 11 months from actually being diagnosed, but 8 months until I had symptoms. You know, it's like it did it. You know, maybe that's why I'm living a little bit longer. I got diagnosed a little bit earlier, and when I get into my late 50s, early 60s, if I live that long, if I'm graced to live that long, I'll suddenly rapidly deteriorate. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why I'm still here. You know, the survivor's guilt is real. I can't explain why I'm still here. You know, it hurts to know the other faces and family members, but also other people that have passed along. You know, other people that have lost or progressed more than I am at this state. The fact that I've been plateaued at this point. Of course, some of it, you know, the discomfort is covered by things like Keppra, so that has helped me from suffering from the severe spasticity. It's not something to treat the disease, it helps the symptoms. You know, I got off of the gabapentin because that caused too much garbage with being able to speak and the risks of dementia with it. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, they're giving gabapentin to people for hot flashes. They're giving gabapentin for everything. You know, it's like now apparently people are, I don't know, they give it to people for pain. They give it to, is that why people want to divert it? Is that what's causing a drug addiction problem? I mean, who's going to try to get high from gabapentin? That is a garbage drug. It helps neurological pain, but you can't speak. I mean, I don't understand why that would be. I mean, ugh. But people that abuse things will abuse anything. I mean, you know, you get carded for Sudafed for, you know, having allergies, you know, super glue. I don't know. I mean, it's like people, you know, it's like, but my current things with the palliative care is doing well. So I am well controlled. I have a good people around me. Saw the GI doctor, so I don't have gastroparesis. They're talking about, and she's like, well, you're still breathing good, but you should talk about the feeding tube. And I know some people may choose when they have ALS to get a feeding tube. I do not want to do it. Nope. You know, if you can't eat, that's a natural part of dying. So if I can't swallow to eat, I will die that way. I have gut issues. I have, you know, severe gastritis. I have a hiatal hernia. I have IBS. I have, you know, so many different things. And my stomach goes big, goes small, goes big, goes small. I know that I would have, you know, terrible times with stomach acid coming out and irritating my skin. No, I don't want to suffer that way. I used to have to clean people's GI tubes, and it made it look like it hurt. You know, you had to be really gentle. Trachs, I refuse to be trached. I actually have the DNR and DNI on my chart because, you know, the trach, I would have to be put in a facility that would take the money out of our house, which would be difficult for my family. And I don't know. I mean, as many trachs as I've taken care of, and just the irritation around that. You know, some people do fine. Some people don't get irritated. Some people say it's worth it. Some people say it's worth it to have the G-tube. Some people have very happy with they have a J-tube or any type of gastric tube to feed them, and they feel better that way. I am just deciding to go naturally. You know, it's like I don't want anything more. I have a terrible form of ALS. You know, if I get to the point where I start developing the dementia aspect of FTD with ALS, I've been told it's more gentle with ALS, not like my dad's who had the behavioral onset. But I don't want to prolong. You know, it's like I'm glad I'm living. I'm still functional. I can still be a mom. I can still be a wife. I can still be a good friend. I can still be an aunt. I can still be a sister. You know, I have so many precious nieces and nephews that I love seriously. You know, I'm so thankful my little sister moved back to Houston. You know, I'm sad that, you know, with the heat, you know, extreme heat, I'm not as active. You know, I told my little sister so many things that she wants to do. It's like, well, when the fall comes and the temperatures go down, hopefully I perk up. You know, there's good and bad days now. I mean, I'm having more bad days with the weakness and pain than good days, but you know, mind over matter sometimes. You know, if somebody needs something, it's amazing how I pull it together. Though I can't overexert, that's my big thing. So in 7 years, have I learned lessons? Yes. You know, take care of yourself if you have ALS. You never know. I mean, there's not a curse that you're going to die quickly. You might live longer like I am. You know, you don't know. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, it's just what you continue to do and what you put into things, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of your family members. When you get your head around the diagnosis, and it changes. I mean, you don't ever truly get everything because things always change. You have to accommodate. But there is hope. There is always hope. You know, you might not go that fast. You know, you have to figure it around. And if you're angry, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset that this disease is affecting you. But work on yourself, because being angry to family members taking care of you, the caregivers, everything, dying in anger is a hard way to go. So find people to help you. Talk to, you know, there's the groups that you can get into with ALS. You know, I Am ALS has groups. The ALS Association has groups. So does Compassionate Care ALS, you know. there's different things to be able to talk with other people with ALS. You know, I'm constantly busy, so sometimes I can't be in some of the groups as much as I would like to. But, you know, there's help, and there's good things in life. Even though there's difficult things, there are good things. So I'm still amazed, 7 years, I'm still trying to get my head around that, you know. You know, all that's happened, I'm glad that I'm still here. I'm glad that I've had this 7 years. And of course, my goal is to get my youngest graduated. Every person I know has ALS, that has kids, wants to see their kid to graduate. So I'm not different. I'm not alone in that. I would like to live long enough that my grandchildren remember their Oma. You know, long enough to help my husband get through the treatments for his eyes, to be there for my best friend, to my sister, to my nieces and nephews, you know, to all my family. So that's kind of my meandering for right now, you know. Hopefully I put some more videos up soon. I'm not going to guarantee, but I'm still alive, still kicking. My thoughts of the day, 7 years after preliminary diagnosis, I'm still here. I'm amazing. And I still have a bad sense of humor, and I still meander and ramble on. But thanks for watching the video. You guys take care. And remember, each day, find the beauty in the day. Even if it's difficult, it's still there. Okay, thanks guys. And remember to like and subscribe. Thanks.